nomination.
Oh.
Everybody, thank you for coming out tonight with the snow and questionable conditions throughout the day. I know on Twitter was like, what are the roads like? But appreciate everybody showing up today. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Ashley Drake. I'm part of HashDcard on Twitter and just about everywhere else you can find me. Tonight, Christelle is going to be talking to us about how to close the sale with Twitter. She actually was extremely successful at the Albuquerque Journal doing marketing that way, and now she's over at the Chamber. And so she's going to share her real experience with all of us on how to use Twitter. She's been a Kiwanis member for 2 years. She's been doing business-to-business sale for 5 years, which is I know what a lot of us are doing. Not so much us, but a lot of others are doing business-to-business sale. She's got a small little adorable boy. You can see all of his photos on Facebook. And what is his name?
Jonathan.
Jonathan, that's right. I knew I was going to goof it up if I didn't ask. She's now doing the membership sales for the Chamber. We've got some information packets for if anybody's interested in that today. She said she oh, here we go. We like parties, long walks on the beach. Oh, never long walks on the beach and has no shame in singing karaoke. You can tell that because she did a mad 5-minute blitz at Ignite, and it was fantastic. And she also, in spite of it, I'm going to let her come up here. She does love Lady Gaga, but I'm still going to let her speak in spite of that. So everybody, we've got Christelle here for how to close the sale with Twitter.
And you got ready for this listening to Thriller.
I know.
Yes, that's right. She's inspired by Thriller today.
I was just telling Rich, sometimes I forget about how Twitter is such a major communication tool. And sometimes people go up to me, for example, Matt from Which actually went up to me and he goes, oh my gosh, I love that SNL skit. And I'm going, great. How did you know I was watching it? And of course, I post my whole life on Twitter. But to kind of get myself started, thank you guys for coming out here. I wasn't expecting any much of a turnout, so thank you so much. This actually really means a lot. As Ashley kind of introduced, this is my avatar and my handle. And I've been doing sales. Actually, when Ashley booked me for this, I was actually working for the Albuquerque Journal at the time. And I mentioned Kiwanis in my bio, which I really didn't think she'd mention that I actually like Lady Gaga. I totally meant that as a joke. But I was working at the Journal, previously to the Clovis News Journal, before then working in business-to-business sales. I got the job with Terry Cole after working for Kiwanis. And at the time I was still kind of at the Journal when I met Ashley. So that's how it all started. Another thing that I actually did, a little bit of some of the experience that I had before I went on Twitter, like I said, I was doing newspaper sales for about 1.5 years in Clovis News Journal, where I met my significant other. And then also, I actually worked at Best Buy for a very long time, on and off for 3 years while working in advertising and marketing and going to school. But I actually learned a lot of things while I was at Best Buy, and that's actually where I got my foundation for sales, which a lot of people don't realize that the people that sell you TVs are actually the future sales professionals in America. So before I go into a little bit more about Best Buy, I kind of wanted to make sure I set the expectations here. I'm assuming all of you folks are in the field of sales or do something along the lines of bringing in revenue for your company. So I just wanted to ask the general question, what are the expectations that you have for me being up here? What are some of the questions that you might have? What are some of the things that you expect to hear? Anybody? Or are you just here for the food?
Just here for the food. No, I'm trying to grow my real estate business.
Great.
And I want to find out how I can use Twitter better as a tool.
Okay.
I want to be sold on Twitter.
Sold on Twitter. Okay. Anything else? Yes.
I think that a more legitimate information where they're actually going to click instead of just that stuff out there where they say how a lady made,
Yeah.
$4,000 after retiring and it's just,
That's a very good question. Please remind me at the end. So I can answer that specifically because ROI is a huge thing, especially since social media is a form of marketing and it's very hard to measure that sometimes. So please ask me that at the end before I forget. But I did have an exercise while we all eat, which is word exercise. No. The exercise is when you hear the words salesperson, what's the first thought that comes to your head? Go ahead and shout it out.
money.
Money,
Hard sell.
hard sell, pressure,
Yeah.
sleazy. God, you guys have played this game before. I'm sorry?
Retail,
Retail,
vulture.
vulture. Ooh, I haven't heard that one before. Dang. Anything else?
Professional.
Professional. Not quite the good angle I was going after, but that's okay. I like that. Anything else? No? Well, one thing that you'll see in this presentation, and I'll probably go through it so I don't take too much of your time, and please chime in if you have any questions, but you bring up a very good point with the word professional, because, very good segue, the first rule of Twitter, if you are a salesperson, is that Twitter brings down the salesperson barrier. I can honestly tell you that, and I'm sure anybody else will tell you, is that Twitter is the relationship with people. It's not just a place to advertise your message. It's not a place where you can tell about your life, even though some people just do that. Sales, pretty much when it comes to Twitter, that's where, and these are some of the suggestions I would give to you folks as salespeople. Being that Twitter's actually been successful as far as bringing sales in for me, you can talk about yourself. Tell yourselves, or tell people about the funny things that have happened. One time, I saw a person that actually is kind of in sales. He mentioned about how his dog had a seizure, and the lady thought she had killed the dog. And everybody thought it was so funny, he ended up getting followers that way. A couple of other things is that folks like web designers have actually noticed how they start talking on Twitter, and all of a sudden they position themselves as the expert. So it starts to bring down that common barrier that salespeople have. Because one thing I'm sure everybody has is that when they first meet someone, especially if they're not a salesperson, they have that reservation, which is that wall that comes up, right? How many of you folks have that? I don't know if I want to talk to them yet. I don't know if that's something that I really want to be with. But as you can see, for example, Rich said, or Tatsi just said, oh, you're listening to Michael Jackson. I was able to bring that wall down because of the fact that she knew what I was doing beforehand. She knew that I had a love for Michael Jackson. I wasn't all seriousness. I wasn't a vulture. I wasn't a person that was just asking for some money, or I wasn't a person that's just being aggressive.
Or a stalker.
Or a stalker.
Salesperson, a
Stalker,
stalker.
yeah. And so that's a good thing. It actually brings down the barrier, so when you actually have the opportunity to meet, you feel like you actually know the person already, or at least a little bit of something where you can at least start the conversation afterwards. But a couple things that whenever you're on Twitter, don't forget to actually put what you do on your bio. A lot of folks forget that it's easy to get caught up in the Twitter scheme of things, that you're like, oh, I do this, when you actually meet them and they say, well, I didn't know that. I didn't know that you actually sell houses. I didn't know that you actually are a web designer. Don't forget to mention that in your bio. Don't forget to actually link to your company website, or to if your Twitter profile is a branding tool for you as a person. For example, Ashley, perfect example of how Twitter is just a branding tool for Ashley Drake Gephardt and Drake Intelligence Group. Of course, there's a link to her website. Don't forget to do that. That's okay. I know. Been to the venues here before, so I understand. And you know, don't always use a logo unless that's a company type of profile. It's good to know, like whenever, and I've had that happen where I'm at a bar, which I don't actually go to bars, but I've had, I really don't.
You've heard these stories before.
Yeah. But for example, Kevin ABQ came up to me and he goes, "You're Miss Crystal, aren't you?" And I said, "Yes. Should I know you?" And he actually did. And so those branding pictures, if they're as close to you as much as possible, do that. Jennifer didn't recognize you, that's okay. So that's number one. Any questions? Pretty basic stuff. Number two, you